In the distant corners of the galaxy, far from the bustling centers of power, an alien fleet patrolled the borders of known space. These alien ships were no strangers to danger, as they had faced many unknown threats in the past. However, nothing could have prepared them for the strange and mysterious event that was about to unfold. The fleet's leader, Commander Alaric, stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring out into the vast expanse of space. His crew worked quickly and quietly around him, monitoring their sensors and communications. The fleet was on routine patrol, keeping an eye on any ships that might cross into their territory. Suddenly, the stillness was broken by a strange, distant signal. It was weak at first, a faint blip on their radar, but it grew stronger with each passing second. Alaric's brow furrowed. "What is that?" he asked, turning to his officer. "It's coming from deep space, Commander. It's not from any known ship or station," the officer replied, his voice filled with uncertainty. Alaric's curiosity was piqued. "Get a team to investigate. I want answers." As the order was given, a small group of reconnaissance ships set out from the main fleet to trace the signal's origin. The fleet was ready for anything, but none of them expected what they would find. The mysterious signal led them to an area of space no one had charted before. It was dark and empty, with no stars in sight, only the void of space. "They're drifting." Like a ghost was an unknown warship. It was unlike anything the fleet had ever seen. Its design was old, yet it had a strange modern feel to it, as if the ship was built from a forgotten time and yet still incredibly advanced. The alien ships paused, their engines idling as they cautiously observed the mysterious vessel. This ship isn't on any of our records," one of the officers reported, a hint of awe in their voice. "It's as if it shouldn't even exist." Alaric's hands tightened around the armrest of his chair. "Any signs of life on board?" The officer looked over his readings. "No, Commander. There's no movement, no response. It's just floating there, dead in space." The commander didn't trust it. "Send a shuttle to investigate. Keep your weapons ready, just in case." The shuttle slowly approached the mysterious warship, the crew inside tense with anticipation. As they came closer, they could see the ship's surface was marked with strange symbols and designs markings that seemed almost familiar, but impossible to decipher. The hull of the ship was battered and worn, as though it had been through countless battles, yet it still looked intact and dangerous. "Commander, we're about to dock," came the voice from the shuttle's pilot. Alaric nodded. "Keep your communication open and be prepared for anything. We don't know what we're dealing with here." The shuttle docked with the warship, and the crew quickly disembarked, cautiously entering the strange vessel. They found it eerily quiet. The inside was dark, with only a faint flickering light that seemed to come from nowhere. The walls were covered in the same strange symbols, and the air felt thick, almost as if the ship had been abandoned for a long time. "Anyone here?" One of the officers called out into the silence, but there was no reply. It felt as though the ship was empty, but something still felt off. As they ventured deeper into the warship, they noticed something unusual. The ship seemed to be powered on, its systems humming faintly, but there was no sign of life anywhere. The crew could not shake the feeling that they were being watched, though no one could see who or what might be watching them. "I don't like this, Commander," one of the officers said, his voice shaking. "It's too quiet, too strange." Alaric's voice crackled through their communicators. "Return to the shuttle immediately. It's too dangerous. Get back to the fleet now." The team quickly turned around, but just as they reached the shuttle bay, the lights on the ship flared to life. A low hum filled the air, and the ship's systems powered on with alarming speed. The strange warship was no longer just a floating mystery. It was alive, reacting to their presence. "Commander," the officer called, panic creeping into his voice. "It's powering up. We're not alone on this ship." Before they could retreat, the warship's systems surged, and the lights grew brighter, almost blinding. A deep rumble shook the vessel, and the crew barely managed to scramble back into the shuttle before the ship's power systems reached their peak. The shuttle detached from the warship just as the ship's engines roared to life, back aboard the flagship. Commander Alaric watched, in shock as the human warship began to move, slowly at first, then faster and faster, as if it was waiting for the fleet to make its next move. It wasn't attacking, not yet, but the commander could sense that the ship was far from harmless. "What are you waiting for?" Alaric muttered to himself. "What kind of ship is this?" The alien fleet was frozen in place, unable to react as the warship made its first move, and for the first time in his career, Alaric felt fear rise in his chest. The mystery of the human warship was only just beginning, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The fleet had been silent for hours, unsure of what to make of the strange event that had just occurred. The mysterious warship, which had come from nowhere, was now fully powered and moving at an unhurried pace through the stars. Its destination, however, was unclear. On the bridge of his flagship, Commander Alaric watched the warship's every move. His officers worked quickly, trying to gather more information. But the strange ship seemed to block every effort to understand it. Their scanners simply couldn't make sense of it. The ship wasn't showing any signs of a standard power source, nor was it responding to any of their usual communication methods. "This ship is unlike anything we've ever seen," an officer said, frustration clear in his voice. "It doesn't match anything in our records." Alaric stood, pacing the bridge. "We need answers. Contact the rest of the fleet. Prepare for any possible threat." But as the orders were given, something unexpected happened. The warship, without warning, turned and began to head directly toward the fleet. "Commander, it's heading right for us," one of the officers shouted. The fleet immediately readied their weapon systems, though none were truly certain of what they were about to face. The unknown warship's purpose was still a mystery, and it seemed to have no clear intention of engaging. The tension on the bridge thickened as the fleet's ships locked into position, waiting for whatever was to come. Alaric tried to stay calm. "Keep your distance. Let it make the first move." As the mysterious warship approached, its surface shimmered faintly in the dim light of space. The alien fleet's weapon systems aimed at the ship, but no one fired. They were all waiting, wondering if it was going to attack. They had faced countless enemies before, but this was different. This was not a battle they had expected to fight. Then, with no visible warning, the warship released a strange burst of energy, not in the form of a weapon, but something much more unusual. A powerful, electromagnetic pulse erupted from the ship, spreading quickly through space. "What was that?" an officer asked, watching in disbelief as their sensors flickered and shut down. The pulse had interfered with everything. Communication systems went silent, and the fleet's ability to target the ship was gone. "Return fire," Alaric commanded, his voice steady, despite the panic he felt growing inside. But when they tried to fire their weapons, nothing happened. The pulse had disabled their systems completely. "Commander, we can't control the fleet," another officer shouted. "We're powerless. The entire fleet has been affected." Alien ships floated helplessly in space, unable to respond to the human warship. It continued moving with a calm, deliberate pace, almost as if it was testing them. There was no aggression, no signs of an impending attack, but the fleet had been neutralized in an instant. Alaric clenched his fists. He was used to being in control, to facing overwhelming forces and finding a way to win. But this was different. The human warship wasn't just a powerful enemy. It was a force that could disable their greatest strength with a single move. The commander's mind raced. What kind of ship is this? What does it want? As the warship continued its slow, careful approach, something even stranger occurred. The ship's communications systems, which had been silent up until now, suddenly came to life. A transmission appeared on the fleet's communication screens, though it wasn't in any language they recognized. "Prepare to translate," Alaric ordered, though he wasn't sure what to expect. The crew worked quickly to decipher the message, but it seemed like no matter what they did, the words were beyond their understanding. Then the message shifted, and a voice clear and calm spoke through the speakers. "This is a warning," the voice said, its tone almost serene. "We are here. Do not challenge humanity." The words echoed in Alaric's mind, and he felt a chill crawl up his spine. A warning? From who? From what? And why humanity? The voice was calm, yet there was a certain finality to it, a tone that made the commander question his entire understanding of power in the galaxy. What does this mean? One of the officers whispered, fear creeping into his voice. Who are they? Alaric didn't have an answer. I don't know, he admitted, his voice low. But we can't let our guard down. We need to figure out what they want to tand fast. The fleet drifted in the silence of space, vulnerable and confused. The human warship continued its journey, unaffected by the chaos it had caused. It wasn't fleeing. It wasn't attacking. It was simply ... waiting in the alien fleet. Now powerless and uncertain, had no choice but to wait as well. Back on his flagship, Commander Alaric stared at the screens. The warship's message was clear. Humanity had arrived. Was about to learn that they were not ready for what came next. The silence in the fleet stretched on as the mysterious human warship drifted like a shadow, its presence growing heavier with each passing minute. The crew aboard Alaric's flagship worked furiously, trying to regain control of their systems. But the effects of the electromagnetic pulse from the warship had left them powerless. The fear that had settled over the fleet now seemed to grow, an invisible weight pressing down on their shoulders. On the bridge, Alaric stood, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the strange warship. It wasn't attacking, not yet. But the commander felt the quiet menace in the air. He had faced countless enemies before, from rival fleets to dangerous space creatures, but nothing had ever made him feel so helpless. The human ship was unlike anything they had encountered before, and it wasn't just a ship, it was a symbol of something more terrifying. Commander, one of the officers said, her voice trembling, our communication systems are still down. Can't reach the rest of the fleet, and they can't hear us. We're completely isolated. Alaric nodded grimly. I know. You have to figure out what this ship wants. Why is it here? Just as he spoke, a deep rumbling sound filled the bridge, a low vibration that seemed to come from the very core of the warship. The alien officers froze, listening intently. The noise grew louder, more intense, until the ship itself seemed to shake from within. The warship... It's moving again, shouted an officer. It was true. Human warship had begun to move once more, but this time it wasn't just drifting aimlessly. The ship was heading straight toward the center of the alien fleet with calculated precision. It was a slow, deliberate approach, but its presence felt like a looming storm. Prepare for evasive maneuvers, Alaric commanded, his voice steady. We won't wait for it to make the first move. But as the fleet attempted to shift into a defensive position, something even stranger occurred. The human warship didn't fire. Instead, it released another pulse, this time even more powerful than before. It swept through space like an invisible force, pushing past their ships with brutal efficiency. The alien fleet, already vulnerable, from the first wave of pulses, now found their systems completely disabled. Nothing is working. A panicked officer shouted, "We can't move. We can't fire." Alaric's mind raced as he realized the truth. This was no ordinary ship. It wasn't just a warship. It was a weapon that didn't rely on guns, missiles, or traditional methods of warfare. The human ship didn't need to attack with force. It could disable and control its enemies without even raising a finger. Commander, we need to retreat, another officer suggested. We can't fight this. But Alaric shook his head. Retreating would be pointless. This ship isn't just attacking us, it's testing us. We don't understand it yet. We need to figure out how it works before it's too late. As the fleet continued to drift helplessly in space, Alaric's mind was consumed by a singular thought. How had humanity developed such a powerful ship? How had they created something capable of completely shutting down a fleet of technologically superior vessels without a single shot fired? And more importantly, what did this ship want? Was it an invasion, or was it something else? While the fleet struggled to regain control, another transmission suddenly appeared on their screens, but this time it was different. The voice from the mysterious warship spoke again, but now it was more clear, more distinct. Humanity does not seek war, the voice said calmly. We are here to protect, not to destroy. But you have been warned. This is your final opportunity to leave. The words hit Alaric like a physical blow. He had expected to hear threats, demands for surrender, but not this. The human warship wasn't here to conquer them. It was here to deliver a warning that had the weight of an entire civilization behind it. Protect, one of the officers muttered in disbelief. How can they protect us when they've already disabled our fleet? Alaric's thoughts were racing. The human warship's message was both simple and terrifying. They weren't here to negotiate. They weren't here to destroy. They were here to establish their presence, to make it clear that humanity had the power to bend the galaxy to its will. If they chose to, the commander's mind flashed back to the galaxy's history. He had read about the ancient civilizations, the great empires that once ruled the stars. But all of them had eventually fallen, unable to keep up with the rapid pace of technological advancement. Now, humanity had arrived, and it seemed they were already far beyond anything the galaxy had ever known. Alaric's fingers tightened around the armrest of his chair. We've underestimated humanity, this warship. Whatever it is, it's not just a ship. It's a statement, Commander and officer said cautiously. What should we do? We've lost control. Should we prepare for a final stand? Alaric hesitated for a moment. The words from the human warship still echoed in his mind. Humanity had made their intentions clear. They didn't want a war, but they would finish one if necessary. We do nothing, Alaric said finally. The alien fleet, now completely powerless, was left to drift in space, caught in the shadow of the mysterious human warship. Its message had been clear. Humanity had arrived, and their power was undeniable. The galaxy would soon understand the true extent of what humanity was capable of, and for the first time in Alaric's long career, he felt the unmistakable sting of fear. The galaxy was no longer the same, and the rise of humanity had just begun. The silence in space grew unbearable as the alien fleet continued to drift helplessly, surrounded by the silent, looming presence of the human warship. With every passing moment, the tension on Alaric's flagship grew thicker, as if the ship itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Yet despite the stillness, the feeling of danger remained as sharp as ever. Commander Alaric stood at the center of the bridge, his eyes fixed on the screen, watching the mysterious ship with an intensity that matched the fear growing inside him. The human warship had not attacked, not directly, but it had done something far worse. It had left the alien fleet powerless, immobilized, and unsure of how to proceed. We have no communication, one officer said nervously. We can't even send a distress signal to the other fleets. If we try, they'll never receive it. Alaric's gaze never left the screen. This isn't about communication. This is about control. His mind raced with the implications of what had just happened. The human ship had not used its weapons. It had not attacked in the traditional sense, but it had crippled the fleet with terrifying ease. The pulse that had disrupted their systems. The calm efficiency with which the human warship had moved it was all too deliberate, too calculated. And the warning it had broadcasted had been simple, yet chilling. This is your final opportunity to leave. Commander, another officer interrupted, her voice shaky. We've been monitoring the human warship. It hasn't made any further moves. It's just sitting there, watching us. Alaric's mind flashed back to the words of the human ship's message. We are here to protect, not to destroy. The irony of it hit him like a physical blow. The human warship had disabled their fleet with ease, but it wasn't attacking, wasn't trying to conquer them. Instead, it had shown them that it could, if it wanted to, completely wipe them out. The alien commander clenched his fists. The ship's message was clear. We are stronger than you, and we have no intention of leaving you alone. You will respect our power. Alaric wasn't sure what to do. The fleet was at its mercy, and there was nothing they could do to fight back. His orders had always been clear in battle. Fight to win. Fight to protect your people. But now there was no enemy to fight. There was only an overwhelming force that had no interest in negotiating. "Prepare the fleet to retreat," Alaric said, his voice hard. "We can't stay here, but we can't leave without making sure we don't provoke them further."
That.
The order was relayed, but just as the ships began to shift into position, the human warship made its move again. This time, however, it wasn't to unleash another devastating pulse or move closer. Instead, the warship began to transmit a series of data streams, one after another, into space. The images on the bridge screens flickered as the alien officers tried to decode the messages. The transmissions were inhuman complex, impossible to understand at first glance. But something in the patterns made the hair on the back of Alaric's neck stand up. "What is this?" one officer muttered, tapping frantically at his console. "It's a map, but it's unlike anything we've seen." As the streams of data continued to pour in, Alaric's heart began to race. The map on the screen revealed vast swaths of the galaxy, showing the locations of different civilizations, fleets, and regions, marked with symbols and data that the aliens had never encountered. It was a map of the entire galaxy. But with a strange twist, humanity's presence was highlighted across it, a symbol of their dominance. The data was overwhelming, but one thing was clear: the human warship was telling them something. Alaric stepped forward, his mind struggling to make sense of what he was seeing. "This is not just a warning. This is a message, a map, showing us where humanity's influence extends." "It's a map of power," another officer whispered, fear in his voice. "They want us to see that they are everywhere." Alaric's gaze hardened. He realized that the warship wasn't just showing them their power. It was reminding them that humanity's reach stretched far beyond the borders of their galaxy. And if they chose to, humanity could extend that power in ways no one could predict. For the first time, Alaric felt the full weight of what humanity had done. They had not just created an incredible warship, they had created a civilization that could reach every corner of the galaxy with ease. And they were willing to use that power, not for war, but for control. The human warship continued to transmit its message. The data streams filling the screens, flashing brightly as if it was showing them something they could no longer deny. "They've made their intentions clear," Alaric said quietly, turning to his officers. "Humanity isn't here to destroy us. They're here to show us they can." The officer beside him swallowed hard. "And if we don't listen?" Alaric didn't have an answer. The fear that had been building inside him now seemed to take root. He was no longer sure what kind of war they were about to face. The power of the human warship wasn't in its weapons or its strength. It was in its ability to disrupt, to control, to bend the galaxy to its will without ever firing a shot. "What happens now?" one of the officers asked, the uncertainty clear in his voice. Alaric looked out at the human warship, still hovering in space, its power undeniable. "I don't know," he admitted, "but we will find out soon enough." The silence returned, but this time it was not peaceful. It was the silence of something waiting, watching, and the alien fleet could do nothing but wait for humanity to make its next move. The alien fleet, immobilized and vulnerable, hung silently in space. It was as though time itself had stopped. Commander Alaric stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the human warship with growing anxiety. Every moment felt like an eternity, but the ship remained still, silent, waiting. The data streams had stopped. The strange map, showing the extent of humanity's influence, had vanished from the screens. The warship had delivered its message, and now it seemed to wait for the fleet's response. But what was the right response? What could they possibly do against such power? Alaric's thoughts raced as he paced back and forth. This wasn't like any battle he had ever faced. There were no weapons, no explosions, no armies clashing in the void. Instead, humanity's message was clear. "We don't need to fight you. We control everything. We will protect what we want to protect," for the first time. Alaric realized that the human warship wasn't just a symbol of power, it was a symbol of something deeper, something that extended far beyond the warship itself. Humanity had the power to change the entire galaxy. And now, They were making it clear they were willing to use that power, Commander. One of the officers spoke quietly, her voice filled with concern. We've analyzed the map again. There's more to it than we first realized. Humanity has been planting their influence throughout the galaxy for centuries. They have colonies, research stations, military bases, places we never knew existed. Alaric stopped pacing and turned to face her. What are you telling me? Are you saying humanity has been preparing for this? The officer nodded. Yes, it seems they've been building their presence slowly, quietly. And now, with this warship, they've revealed everything. The realization hit Alaric like a wave. Humanity had never intended to invade the galaxy, they had simply waited. It waited until they were strong enough, until they had the means to show the galaxy just how far their reach extended. Yes. And now that they had revealed themselves, they were not asking for permission. They were telling the galaxy to take notice. On the bridge, the silence was deafening. The officers exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of what to say next. The fleet, despite its power, had no way to defend itself. There was no battle to fight. There was no enemy to defeat. And yet they were at the mercy of the human warship, a vessel that could neutralize them with a single command. Just then, the voice from the warship crackled through their communication systems once more. This time, it was even clearer than before. This is humanity, the voice said, calm and measured. We are not your enemy. We have no interest in war. But we will not stand by as the galaxy falls into chaos. You have been warned. Alaric's hands clenched into fists. The voice was cold, almost indifferent, as if the warship had already seen the outcome and was simply waiting for the galaxy to catch up. The message was simple. Humanity had arrived, and they were here to stay. Do not test us, the voice continued. We will not negotiate. We will not retreat. But we will protect what is ours, and you will respect that. The transmission ended, leaving the alien fleet in stunned silence. The tension in the air was palpable. The alien ships, once a symbol of strength, now felt fragile and exposed, like paper beneath a heavy weight. The warship had made its point. It was not here to negotiate, and it was not here to destroy. It was here to control. Alaric looked at his officers, his mind spinning. They had never faced anything like this before. They had always fought to win, always fought to preserve their way of life. But now, they were faced with an entirely new kind of power. A power that didn't rely on violence or destruction, but on influence and control. Humanity didn't need to fight. They had already won. Commander, one officer said, breaking the silence. What do we do now? Alaric hesitated. The human warship was waiting for them to make the next move. But what move could they make? If they attempted to fight, they would be crushed. If they tried to flee, they would be hunted down. There was no escaping the truth. Humanity was the new power in the galaxy. We wait, Alaric said softly, and we learn. We learn what humanity wants, and we find a way to live in this new galaxy. The fleet fell into a tense quiet. We're not retreating, but they were not attacking either. They had been forced into a position of uncertainty, unsure of what their next steps should be. The galaxy had always been a place of endless conflict, where civilizations fought for power and survival. But now that had changed. Humanity had entered the galaxy, not as invaders, but as a force that could not be ignored. As the alien fleet drifted, helpless and unsure, the human warship remained still, a shadow over their heads. A reminder that the balance of power had shifted forever. Alaric stood at the front of the bridge, looking out into the endless expanse of space. The galaxy was no longer just a place for war, it was a place for something else, something new. Humanity had arrived, and they had shown the galaxy their strength. But what would the galaxy do now? How would it respond to the power of a civilization that didn't need to fight, but still held the key to everything? As the fleet waited, one thing became clear. This was only the beginning.